Does anybody know what a record player is?
Oh, well, it's basically like
It's your Lord.
how do I describe this? It's a way of playing music without using Bluetooth.
Yeah. Have you guys seen a broken record player?
Yeah.
No.
So what happens to a broken record?
Well, it doesn't like the arm. It doesn't like move. So like
It spins and sometimes it goes back like 5 seconds and it keeps going back 5 seconds, right?
what these
So
people do.
when people say, "Oh, I sound like a broken record," what does that mean? It means
You're repeating it.
I'm repeating my song again to get right.
Sure, who knows? Let's do it again.
Broken record players don't play music because they're broken.
But they skip.
It's the beat.
It's a metaphor, and I'm just telling you guys about where this metaphor comes from. And actually, the book of Judges sound like a broken record because Israel sins, gets into trouble, cries for help, and then God sends an unlikely rescuer. It happens again and again and again. In Judges 4, after 80 years of rest, Israel relapses into. Sorry, I gotta silence my phone. Israel relapses and lands into the control of Jabin, the king of Canaan. And there's 20 years of oppression, long enough for hope for the Israelites to run dry. God didn't abandon his people, but instead what happened was that hope came in an unexpected form. A woman that was sitting under a palm tree. And has anybody studied World War II? Yeah, like do you? Oh yeah. Golly Lord Miss Joseph Vanguard. So during World War II, the Allied soldiers were the good guys, right? So 338,000 Allied soldiers were trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk, and they were surrounded by Nazi German forces. And it seemed like the war, or at least this battle, was lost. And the Royal Navy couldn't reach them, and the shallow waters that were there made it impossible for large ships to come close. And then something remarkable happened. Ordinary civilians, right? Fishermen, pleasure boat owners, so people that would be the equivalent of people own private yachts nowadays, and even families set sail across the English Channel in small private boats. And hundreds of little vessels joined in, ferrying soldiers from the beaches to safety. It was, and who's actually heard this story before?
Meanwhile, I think I might have.
Right? And this story is it's not well known at all. And yet, this is what made the Nazis lose the war. Like one of the many reasons why Nazis lost the war. Even though it was such a huge event, it's unrecognized, and the whole process was actually an unorganized, dangerous, and desperate, way of dealing with the situation that they were given. Yet it worked. Against all odds, Dunkirk evacuation saved the core of the Allied army. And sometimes when it feels like the end, God sends help not in great, figure of speech, great ships and grand vessels, but in small boats, through ordinary people who answer his calling. When the usual voices go silent, God can raise up new ones, even from places that no one expects. So when we look at verse 1 to 5 of our main passage, Israel repeats the old mess. It says that Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord again. And the spiritual leadership of priests is so lacking that a woman, Deborah, emerges as both prophet and judge. She's sitting, deciding, and listening under a palm tree. And that's not a sexist comment. That is a comment about the olden days where women were not considered people, and yet there was this woman, because of the fact that no men were fit enough to take charge of the country. That a person who was not even considered a person by societal standards back then, was put in charge. Now, in the original language, Leviah, which means prophet, is just not just a leader, but what is a prophet? A person who proclaims God's truth, right? So she's a mouthpiece of God. The word judge, shafat, is one who sets things right, not just legally, but she's also the spiritual advisor that sits between God and his people. Deborah's posture under the palm tree signals spiritual authority built on faithfulness and not platform or status. Because if you look at judges now, where are they? Where do judges rule from? They rule from something like a pulpit, right? Like they,
Oh,
right?
oh, speaking of a court scenario.
Yeah, like they rule in court. And back then, they also had serfs back then, by the way. So judges are supposed to rule from a place of authority, but where was she sitting? She was sitting under a palm tree.
Oh.
And it was not about the way she appeared. It was about the way she was as a person of God. Sometimes God uses unexpected people, and to make it further, maybe even you. When usual leaders have lost their voice, are you sitting in a place of listening, ready to speak for God? So I want to ask you guys to really reflect upon that. Is God trying to use you even though you feel like you're nobody, even though you don't have a position of authority? Like Deborah didn't have, a platform. She was just sitting under a palm tree, right? And you might feel like that yourself too. And I actually looked up a pretty cool piece of history. So I was going through like a history, I was kind of going through a phase of like being obsessed with history this past week or so. So I looked up something from the Korean history. In the late 1500s, Korea was invaded by Japan, and the king fled the capital, and all the generals surrendered, and morale was through the ground. It looked like the nation of Korea was completely lost. And if it was lost, we wouldn't have any. You guys were singing K-pop Demon Hunters right before this. You wouldn't have that, or any K-pop for that matter. But there was one man, Admiral Yi Sun-shin, who refused to give up. He wasn't a celebrity general, or not yet. He wasn't even supported by his own government. In fact, his political rivals falsely accused him, and at one point the king actually imprisoned him. And when the Japanese Navy dominated the sea, the king released Yi in desperation out of prison because no one else was willing to lead. And Yi didn't complain. He simply rebuilt the navy from nothing. He only had 12 ships left. And he told his men, and he told the king, I don't only have 12 ships left, I still have 12 ships left, and I will fight.
Huh?
And against all odds, he led his small, battered fleet of 12 ships into victory, and his courage saved this country and changed the course of history. Now, he fought 23 battles. He lost 0 battles out of the 23 he fought with 12 vessels. The enemy ships that were destroyed is estimated between 130 and 150. Enemy's ships captured or damaged is several hundred, and Korea's ships lost under his direct command is 0. Right? So he went to 23 battles, defeated like hundreds of ships, sinking 130 to 150 of them, and lost 0, suffered 0 casualty when it comes to his ships. all with just 12 ships, right? Sometimes leadership is not about rank or the size of your army. It's about stepping up when everyone else steps back. Yi Sun-shin didn't wait for perfect conditions or approval. He stood his ground when everything looked lost. And this ended up preserving the nation of Korea, and that's why nation of Korea is able to exist as we know it today. Maybe you're in a place where everyone is backing away, where no one wants to take responsibility or show faith. When God's looking at somebody like Yi Sun-shin, right, in terms of faith, because Yi Sun-shin was obviously not a Christian person, when someone says, even if I only have a little, right, this is a recurring theme in the Bible, right? The boy brings 2 loaves and five fish and 2 loaves to Jesus, and says, this is all I have, do something with it, right? This is a reoccurring theme in the Bible. Because one faithful person can change the outcome for everyone else. God's call doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes it comes, and often, actually, let me change that. Most of the times, it comes through people with spiritual depth, regardless of their role or reputation. And your role and reputations, it comes afterwards, right? So look at almost all the heroes. The only person that I can think of that didn't have a position of authority is probably Moses, because Moses was treated as one of the sons of Pharaoh. That's probably the only one. Everyone else came from nothing, and then after they were called by God, they became something. So obedience rooted in God's word is rooted in God's word, not human confidence. If we look at verse 6 to 7 of our main passage, Deborah hears from God, and she summons Barak and calls him to act. She relays God's command. It's not a pep talk, right? But it's a divine battle order that Deborah gives to Barak. Barak listened, but he was actually really reluctant. If you go with me, I'll go. That's what he says. And in the original language, the word command here is sava, tazava. And it's actually a word that that is expected to give a response to. And Barak's hesitation, if you go, then I'll go, blends faith and dependence for whatever reason, right? So Barak's obedience is conditional. He needs Deborah's presence, not just her prophecy. God's strategy was direct, but Barak wanted reassurance. Barak's faith was sincere, but it was weak. His dependence mirrors our own need for visible reminder of God's presence. And because we're not able to physically see God, right? We can't see his physical presence with us. We oftentimes feel the same way. But the thing is that following God is not about seeing and believing because you see it, but it's about trusting his word. And to be honest with you, if you just observe the nature around you, right? If you look at the nature, there has to be a creator, right? So we can actually use reason and logic to come to the conclusion that there is a God, and which better God to follow other than a person a God who came down to earth and lived as we did and died on our behalf, right?
Somebody said if he was real, why didn't he show his face to us? He did, and he
did.
crucified him.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that's like the funniest thing. Like, hey, if he's God, he can just show himself. Well, he did 2,000 years ago, and everybody crucified him, right? So yeah, that's the big irony. Anyway, so God, it's about trusting in his word, especially when we feel our fear outweigh our faith. God honors small steps of obedience, even if the steps are shaky. Now, this is And you remember? Do you guys remember we went through the book of when we were going through the series on Jesus? We talked about we talked a little bit about the Samaritan woman and all those things. Yeah. So actually, the way that John is written, as opposed to the other gospels are written in chronological order, right? That means it happened in order, but John was written in a symbolic order. So John 3, a conversation with Nicodemus happens. Anybody remember who Nicodemus was? He was a teacher of the law. So basically a senior pastor or higher, right? Bishop, that kind of level of when you compare it to Christianity, he was like a bishop. Okay? And then they go to John chapter 4, right? Samaritan woman. Anybody know who the Samaritans were? Samaritans were people who were half Jewish and half Gentiles. So they were mixed blood. And they had all sorts of weird beliefs about God and things that didn't align with the Bible. And then we go to John chapter 4, the second half of it, and then we see a pagan official who's got nothing to do with Jewish religion or Christianity or whatever. He was a pagan official. But what happens to Nicodemus? Nicodemus asks, "How can I be saved?" And Jesus responds, "You must be born again." And he says, "How can I be born again? Should I crawl back into my mother's womb so that I can be born again?" He didn't get what that meant, right? And Samaritan woman, how did she end up believing? She ended up believing after Jesus showed her that he was the Son of God. And then what does it say about the pagan official? It says, it tells us that the pagan official believed Jesus at his word and he left from the place that he was at. So it's like Nicodemus, who is on top of the spiritual food chain. He should know to believe, but yet he was questioning on what that whole thing meant. And then you've got middle of the road, who's half Jewish, half pagan, and she says, "Oh, I believe now that I've seen what you have prophesied and what you have done." And what does a pagan official who's got nothing to do with Christianity say? "Oh, I believe you at your word," and he left, right? So it like goes down in terms of spiritual food chain, but yet the person at the bottom of that spiritual food chain is the only one who truly gets it, right? This is the way that the book of John is written. And sometimes we're too familiar with church and Christianity, but God desires us to trust Him completely regardless of our comfort level. God's call is always bigger than our comfort, but He provides support along the way. Sometimes God uses fellow travelers along the journey, like Barak. So Deborah gives a punchline: "I'll go with you, but the honor will not be yours. God will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman." Deborah demonstrates confidence, not in herself, but in the fact that God is with her, but in God's promise and His ability to use whoever is willing, right? Not whoever is the most capable, but whoever is most willing. Now, honor and glory is the word tafera. It actually also means beauty, glory, crown, and it can also mean jewelry. And of course, God had the glory, but the passage tells us that the glory will also be shared with a woman, Deborah. God redirects His glory to the faithful, not to the fearful, right? But what is being brave? Being brave is not being afraid, but being able to overcome that fear, right? So we can be fearful, but knowing the fact that God is with us, we can overcome that fear. Now so this is about the willingness to pass the credit or spotlight to somebody else, and that actually ends up empowering you and others around you to accomplish so much more. Does anybody watch the Major League Soccer? You do? Who's your team?
Arsenal.
MLS.
Oh, MLS. FC Dallas.
FC Dallas? Okay. So, do you know anything about LAFC?
A little bit.
Okay, do you know the star player that just transferred there? What's his name?
You mean son?
Heung-min Son. So Heung-min Son, he had just won the cup in Europe. By the way, winning a cup in Europe is so much harder than winning a cup in the US. It's the hardest, cup to Europe in general. Soccer is way higher in standard over there. So he won a trophy as a captain in a team in England, and he came, right? And whenever players come from Europe, they usually take it easy. They wait for a couple of weeks, have a vacation. Messi did that when he came. He was spotted many times relaxing on a beach and all of that, not playing any games for a while. And they take weeks to adjust to the time change, etc., and they get paid anyway. But Son was different. He told Bwanga, the co-star that is doing really well along with Son, that he will make Bwanga to score more goals. And but the thing is that LAFC was in a bad atmosphere altogether. But because Son was not greedy, and the servant heart that he had, they actually made it not only to the playoffs, but they're gonna play in the semifinals in 2 weeks. And the duo, Bwanga and Son, set an MLS record for the most consecutive goals scored by two, with all 17 of LAFC's goals in 6-game stretch coming from the pair. A total of 23 goals in 10 matches. Right? Just between them two.
10 games.
Yes. Yes. And this is because of Son Heung-min's servant attitude. It works in both ways. God's plan often reroutes our expectations. His victory might come through the person we least expect, or the attitude that we least expect, because you would imagine a star player to have this arrogant attitude, but he didn't, and that's what led this team so far. And when you have the main character energy but still decide to be humble, this can work too. His victory can work in both ways, when it's an unexpected person or a person with what you guys call main character energy but still decides to be humble. In time when God's people had gone silent and leaders failed, Deborah sat under a palm tree and listened. She called Barak, voiced God's word, and stepped out in faith, showing that spiritual authority is rooted in obedience, not status. Barak's reluctant faith and Deborah's confidence together move God's plan forward, proving that God raises up anyone willing to hear and obey. Deborah and Barak reveal that God's strategy is always faith over fear, obedience over ego, and listening over presuming. So where are you sitting under your own palm tree, where you are not expecting much? God can use you if you are listening, and if your obedience is hesitant, take courage, take heart. God is patient, and He can still do great things if you respond to God's calling. When you are willing, God's call can show up anywhere, even under a palm tree.